Hi friends, welcome to my channel. I'm Gio, and I'm glad you could make it. This week's story is called Whispers of the Lighthouse. Let's get started. I climbed out of the truck, a 2021 green Ford F-150, breathing in the crisp September sea air. The tang of salt, so unfamiliar to my Vegas-numbed senses, felt refreshing, almost healing. Maybe it was because I was escaping from the wreckage of my marriage. 19 years of my life sucked down the drain. Mara, my ex, as of 1 week ago, had painted me as a gambling-addicted, no-good, lazy slacker who couldn't keep a job. So what if I left the stratiform architecture firm 2 years ago to start my own? So what if it failed? So what if I am recovering from my addiction? I haven't touched a slot, gaming table, or even a chip in almost a year. Mara even accused me of having an affair because we haven't had sex in a year. I tried to explain that starting a business requires more time than there are hours in a day. The judge wouldn't hear it and sided with Mara. He granted full custody of my daughter, Sophie, to the witch. Mara told Sophie I was seeing another woman, and I didn't love her anymore. Sophie believed Mara without even asking me. She won't even speak to me now. Sophie even told the judge she wanted to stay with her mother, and that she hated me. It shattered my heart, and I fought back tears in the courtroom. Mara wasn't the woman I married anymore. When had we fallen out of love? I lost almost everything in the settlement. The house, the car, more than 90% of my savings, because I paid alimony in one big lump sum. Though my daughter hated me, I gladly paid child support. She was the only good thing that came out of this disaster. I got to keep the truck because Mara can't drive stick shift, and only Hicks drive trucks. Too depressed to get angry, a chill numbness replaced all my emotions. Bitterness seeped into my soul. The love I once felt for these people morphed into resentment the moment I heard they hated me. One part of me loathed that Mara had won, including the camping gear we used to camp out in the desert when Sophie was younger, and all the picture albums. Another part of me felt relieved to be done with the whole damn mess. A coworker once said that his divorce was harder to deal with than his father's death. I didn't understand that then, but I do now. That's why I'm here, the Randall Reach Lighthouse. The old lighthouse stood about 70 feet tall, a bit short for modern lighthouses. The first story was larger, roughly 1,200 square feet, with a central tower housing a lower room and the stairs that led to the lantern level. Once an oil-based beam, it now emitted a powerful LED light. The lighthouse still worked, though nobody had lived here for decades. The U.S. Coast Guard sent someone twice yearly to ensure its operation. Though my family owned the land and building, the Coast Guard leased the lighthouse. The decades-old agreement, made between my great-grandfather and the Coast Guard, still stood. I'd been here a couple of times before I got married, but Mara never wanted to make the trip. It's too far, she had said with a snide tone. Besides, there's nothing to do at Randall Creek. The weathered stone lighthouse sat on a promontory just outside of the small coastal town, Randall Creek, in Maine. It gave a breathtaking view of the ocean and a cloud-riddled sky painted shades of gray by an incoming storm. The deafening quiet unnerved me. Randall Creek, one of the earliest settlements in America. Settled in 1621 by the good Reverend Theobald Randall, it flourished as a fishing village and now harbors a stable crop of retirees. My family had the honor of being the first settlers. In a way, the lighthouse was our family's legacy from days centuries gone. Memories of me and my brother climbing the stairs to the top, pretending we were soldiers fending off a pirate attack. of Mom setting up an elaborate picnic just to show how much she loved us, though I never realized it at the time. Dad dreamt of leaving Vegas, restoring the old place, and moving to Maine, permanently. Mom loved the idea. Life had other plans. The last time we visited, I was 18. Shortly after that, Dad was diagnosed with kidney failure and needed dialysis twice weekly. My family never came back. Dad had to stay close to the hospital for the rest of his life. He died when I was 30. Though I met Sophie as a baby, he only had a chance to hold her a handful of times. This place had become a metaphor for my life. Run down, abandoned, unloved, as empty as my soul. When I called Mom and told her I needed a place, she reminded me about Randall's Creek and the Lighthouse. Turns out I didn't need the old keys. The broken door hung from its rotted frame. I walked into the place, memories flooding back. I remembered the last time I was here. Excited, sprinting up the lighthouse stairs, spending hours on the balcony, looking at the sea. A musty smell of old dust and a room that hadn't been aired out in years greeted me. The old wallpaper peeled in torn sections from the wall, and a large brown spot on the ceiling marked where the roof had leaked. My footsteps echoed in the stillness. The chill inside the house equaled the chill inside me. I found the stairs and took them 2 at a time, up to the top. A trapdoor sealed the lantern room from the rest of the building. The Coast Guard kept it locked, but I had the keys. Once unlocked, I ran past the electronics that controlled the LED lantern, threw open the door to the balcony, and stepped outside into wonder. The view of the distant horizon held me spellbound. My heart leaped and soared with the wind. The sway of the light gray ocean, the feather-white tips on the nearest waves, the cries of seagulls above me, filled my senses. I took a deep breath and inhaled the home I had forgotten. The salt air tasted like freedom. The wind whispered secrets I had long buried, and for the first time in years, I felt a spark of hope ignite within me. The last time I had been this happy had been years ago, the day I quit Stratiform and started my own firm. I kept expecting my ex to call me and yell at me to ruin the party, but she never did. I took out some paper and wrote my daughter a letter, explaining as much as I could. Who am I kidding? She'll never read it. Either Mara would intercept it and burn it, or Sophie would get it and burn it without reading it. It felt good to write to her, to try and explain my side of the story. I must have been up there for an hour, enjoying the peace and quiet, when I noticed another truck on the property. The setting sun streaked the sky with gold and turned the clouds crimson, bathing the world in golden light. A cool offshore breeze played with my hair, bringing with it the sense of freedom and possibility. The lighthouse isn't the only thing my family owned. We also owned part of the beach. My grandparents had toyed with the idea of building a summer home. They never built it, but the dream lingered in the air. I saw a small speck of light surrounded by a ring of flickering orange, a campfire on the beach. The wood smoke intrigued me, mingling with the savory aroma of grilled beef. My heart swelled with the sense of belonging and anticipation, as if the universe was hinting at new beginnings and forgotten dreams. A vintage truck parked just off the beach, nestled in a patch of scruff and weeds. Nearby, a man lounged in a collapsible deck chair around a campfire. A blue 2-man tent set up beside him. A Labrador retriever sprawled on the sand next to him. Even though it had been a tough week, and I wanted to be by myself, I didn't want to be alone. Not tonight. Making new friends is easier if you bring gifts. My groceries sprawled in the back of my truck, including a couple of six-packs of Victory Golden Monkey Ale. Not every place sells it, but it's worth it just for the name. Not bothering to lock up the old house. Couldn't anyway. I grabbed a six-pack from my truck and hiked to the campfire. As I approached, I got a better look at the man. Shirtless and 10 years younger than me, he had the physique of someone who swam every day. Strong arms, powerful shoulders, and a sleek waist. Was that a tattooed anchor on his shoulder? Had he been in the Navy? The nerves settled in my stomach. What if I was intruding? Blind introductions were never my forte. Several large stones circled the fire, a grill resting atop them. Two burgers sat in the middle. The fire had almost burned down to embers, the red glow sputtering as the grease dripped onto them. I focused on the stranger. Casual, sun-blonde hair ruffled in the breeze, and his dark eyes strayed out to sea. Lost in thought, he mindlessly turned one of the burgers on the makeshift grill. His dog noticed me first and barked 3 times. Golden retrievers are known to be playful. He ran up to me, half jumping, and placed his paws on my chest, barking excitedly. Startled, I froze, almost dropping the beer. The man jumped to his feet and yelled in a commanding tone, "Barnacle, sit." The dog immediately whined and sat in front of me, tail wagging, looking like a kid expecting a treat. "Sorry about my dog. I wasn't expecting anybody," the man said. "What are you doing on the beach this late at night?" "Bearing gifts," I said, holding out the six-pack. "I'm moving into the Lighthouse, and I didn't want to drink alone. Came to meet my neighbors. Lance Turner." I held out my hand and smiled, hoping for a little company. He walked over and shook my hand. "Aiden Mercer, and this little bundle of hyperactivity is Barnacle." He gestured toward the log he'd been sitting on. "Mi casa is su casa, or tent anyway. I can throw an extra burger on the grill while we wait." We sat down, and I asked, "Wait for what?" Aiden shifted the 2 almost cooked burgers to the side of the grill, got out a third patty from one of the coolers, and placed it on the grill. Opening one of the beers, he sat down. "I'm a marine biologist out of Woods Hole, Massachusetts." "I thought you guys all lived in Monterey, California." "There's an institute there, but I work at Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute." He held his beer. I clinked mine to his. We sipped our beers. A nice, full-bodied, dark amber brew with hints of orange zest. Victory Golden Monkey Ale has become my favorite beer since I discovered it. Aiden leaned in and stirred the coals. "I'm here for the Eubulina glacialis, the North American right whale. They are in migration right now." "I've never heard of them," I said. "I'm not surprised," he said. "They're not only rare, but centuries ago they were hunted almost to extinction. Only 350 survive today." "Why so few?" I asked, glad for the company, even though I didn't know anything about the whales. I did like sitting next to this guy. His warm smile, his relaxed way of talking, not to mention his incredible dog. Yep, I liked this guy. Aiden leaned over the grill, flipping burgers and pouring a thick, tangy barbecue sauce on them. "We estimate that there used to be up to 21,000 back in the 17th century. But then whaling happened. Slow swimmers, the right whales were considered a major catch because of their extra blubber stores." He pulled his laptop over, displaying some pictures. A large, dark gray whale, with odd, white, scaly skin dotting its head. "How big are they?" I asked, sitting close enough that our legs touched. 70 tons, more than 50 feet long, Aiden said. "The North American right whale is considered critically endangered. Their blubber, at least 12 inches thick, helps them survive Arctic waters and made them float when they died, making recovery easy. In addition to all the blubber, the baleen plates in its mouth were used for corsets, buggy whips, and other things. Not to mention all the meat on the bodies. You're looking at a swimming gold mine." "They swim along here?" I asked. "Yes, they do," Aiden said. "It's on their annual migration route. Look here." He typed something into his laptop, bringing up a map of the Maine coast. Several dots blipped on the screen. This is what I'm waiting for. We've tagged a few whales to monitor them better, and they'll be passing us any time now. My guess is tomorrow, about noon. I've rented a boat to go out and see what I can see. As in scuba diving? I asked. As in scuba diving, he confirmed, checking the burgers for doneness. Have you ever dived? Years ago, I said, the memory flooding back. Almost 2 decades had passed. Life had been simpler then, and I had been happy. When had that changed? My ex and I went diving off the coast of Hawaii 19 years ago. It was our honeymoon. Aidan must have noticed something in my voice because he asked, People don't often use the words ex and honeymoon in the same sentence. What happened? I looked at the dog snoozing near our feet. We divorced a week ago back in Vegas. It must have been a bad one to make you drive all the way to Maine, Aidan said, his voice softening. I've dealt with a bad breakup, and I've never gotten over it. Tell me about it, I said, feeling an immediate camaraderie with this man. Aidan placed a couple of buns on the grill and stared out to sea. Jacob and I had been an item since high school. I thought we were soulmates, even talked about marriage. I thought we were going in the same direction. I was wrong. Jacob wanted to travel. I wanted to get my master's. We argued about money, about our futures, about a lot of things. It got ugly. We split. That was years ago, and I remember the argument like it was this morning. He glanced at me, a vulnerable look that made my heart ache. I felt the same way. No relationships since? I asked, feeling the pain swell inside me. Aidan shook his head, giving me a wry smile. A few, but nothing long-term. Do you still love him? Not anymore, he said, placing one of the grilled buns on a paper plate. He opened a cooler filled with sliced tomatoes, cheese, pickles, relish, ketchup, mustard, mayonnaise, and barbecue sauce. Help yourself. Same question. Do you still love your ex? She turned my kid against me and took everything except my truck, I said, my voice hardening. I love my daughter, but not my ex. She can go to hell for all I care. And now we are free. Aidan raised his beer in a toast, his eyes reflecting the flames. To Maine and getting away from the world. To Maine, I echoed, raising my beer and clinking the bottles together. We sipped, the night air growing cooler, our conversation warm and comforting. We finished our burgers, threw our paper plates onto the embers, and watched them burn, the flames dancing like memories. The six-pack, now gone, left us in a mellow, slightly buzzed mood, and vulnerable. Loneliness gnawed at me, a constant ache. I didn't want to be alone, not in a strange state, an unfamiliar building, and having lost everything. Aidan, my only friend in Maine, wasn't even from here. Back in Vegas, I never would have asked this, but desperation made me brave. You'll get a better view of the ocean from the top of the lighthouse, I said, searching Aidan's eyes for any hint of rejection. I've got plenty of room, and you wouldn't have to live on the beach. It's a little run down, but I would love the company. We barely know each other, Aidan said, his voice gentle but cautious. Aren't you afraid I'd steal something? My ex already did, I said. The bitterness and pain were still fresh. Aidan nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. You've got yourself a roommate. It took about an hour to break down Aidan's camp and move him into the lighthouse. Having him around was just what I needed. The background noise of Aidan unpacking his food in the kitchen, and Barnacle, his dog, snuffling around, kept the old place from feeling lonely. About 11 that night, we both turned in. Though we were in separate rooms, we faced the same problem. It had been decades since the old mattresses had last been used. As I lay on mine, the fabric ripped, releasing an old spring that poked me in the back. The mattress smelled of mold, dust, and rot. I sneezed and got up. In nothing but my boxer briefs, I grabbed a beer and trekked to the top of the lighthouse. A slim crescent moon had barely risen over the ocean. The cool breeze brought goosebumps across my arms. The distant stars stared down at me. I sipped my beer, the fourth tonight, savoring the orange and yeasty taste. My mind delved into the past, to my dead dreams of running my own architecture firm, being a man free from the rules of others. I longed to find the courage to be creative, like I once had been before reality tied me down. I don't know how long I stared at the white caps on the dark ocean, when Aidan leaned on the railing next to me, holding another beer. He sipped it and pointed out to sea. It's not far off the coast. Not following what he referred to, I asked, the whales? With a little help, we could double their numbers, he said, his relaxed voice soothing me, his enthusiasm bringing me a momentary burst of excitement. They live up to 70 or 90 years, with some documented cases reaching 100 years old. Do they mate for life like swans or wolves? I asked, the beer making me feel comfortable around this man. No, Aidan said. Their relationships are more, fluid. They don't have monogamous relationships like we know them, but change partners throughout their lives. During the mating season, males do their best to attract females, with noises and displays of strength. Maybe you'll see that tomorrow. You never answered me about the dive. I had nothing else going on in my life, so I saluted him with the beer and said, Yes, I will. You've got lousy beds here, he said, sipping his beer and glancing nervously at me. Since you brought the house, I'll bring the bed. We laid out his sleeping pad and sleeping bag on the living room floor, side by side. I slept the night next to him. I hadn't slept next to a man since I crashed a friend's party back in college, and we both passed out on a random bed. Nothing happened. We were both straight, but we laughed about it the next day. Lying next to the softly breathing Aidan, with barnacles snoring between us, I fell asleep, remembering how happy I'd been. I longingly looked at Aidan, glad I didn't have to sleep alone. A tiny part of me wondered if Aidan and I could find happiness together. I got along better with a stranger than I did with my ex. The next day, after I mailed my letter, found us in a boat about a half-mile from shore. A hired driver at the helm. Aidan had his laptop out, covered in plastic, the blips on the map showing the position of the tagged whales. We both wore black wetsuits and adjusted the tanks on our backs. I checked his, he checked mine. A trickle of anxiety ran down my spine. It had been 19 years since I had last done this. Aidan took a last look at the map, gestured to the side of the boat, and sat down. I joined him. He prepared a silver cylinder with a cable attached on a rope, and checked that it was tight. Aidan threw it into the water. What's that? I asked. A hydrophone, he said. Hopefully, if the whales are close, we could hear them sing. So we wait for them? He handed me a pair of binoculars and pointed to the horizon. The tags say the whales are in that direction, maybe a kilometer away. See if you can spot them. I took the binoculars, my hands trembling with anticipation. The gray ocean looked lifeless, barren, but white crested waves danced with a hidden vitality. I scanned the area Aidan had pointed at, my heart pounding. What am I looking for? I saw it. A large, dark gray bump broke the surface of the water like a living island. It reared up, revealing its head and massive jaws. I barely held on to the binoculars. I think I see it, half a mile or so. I think it's coming this way. They're probably curious about our engine noise, Aidan said, taking the binoculars from me and peering in the direction I was looking. His eyes lit up, and I could see the thrill and awe in his expression mirroring my own. We were both breathless, captivated by the sight of the right whale pod surfacing near us. It was majestic. Through a speaker, Flutes and squeaks filled the air about us. My heart lightened. "Is that whale song?" I asked, holding my breath because I didn't want this moment to end. "Whale song." Aiden turned and grinned at me. I grinned back. In that shared moment of wonder, I felt something for him. Something I hadn't felt in a long time. Our connection was undeniable, a stark contrast to the years spent with my ex-wife. My heart pounded in unison with the waves. The blood pumped through my body, hot and excited, longing to be close to him. "Now we get into the water, but do it slowly. No splashing," Aiden said, adjusting his snorkel and breather. "Try not to make a ripple." The splashing could spook them, I guessed, the excitement starting to build. Aiden gave me a soft smile. "When we're underwater, keep your movements soft and gentle, nothing fast or jerky. Those could be interpreted as a predator closing in. Remember, they might be slow-moving, but a fully grown whale is 1,100 times bigger than us." "I bet it's like getting hit by a semi-truck," I joked. "Worse. Semi-trucks are much lighter," Aiden said. "Pay attention to the calicites on their head. Those are the white and gray patches. They are different from one right whale to another." I gained new respect for the whale. I knew they were big. I never realized they were that big. My excitement was like a kid's on Christmas morning. I hadn't felt like this since when? The thought sobered me. I couldn't remember the last time I'd felt like this. Maybe when my daughter, Sophie, was born, but I was so concerned with learning how to hold a newborn, how to be a good father, how to afford when insurance wouldn't pay, how to get along with my mother-in-law, who insisted on moving in with us for the first month. Not to mention the 9 to 5. It had almost taken a year before I stopped freaking out. We put on our masks, and Aiden made sure his handheld GoPro camera had a tether attached. He nodded his readiness. I said 1, 2, 3. On 3, we eased into the water and entered another world. The cool Maine water shocked me, stealing my breath. It took a minute to adjust to the temperature. Hawaii had been a lot warmer. I'm glad I had worn the wetsuit. Quickly, we activated our BCDs, buoyancy control devices, put on our fins, and swam a few feet down. The sun hit the water above, creating a light blue paradise around us, shifting to a darker blue below us. The blue stretched into infinity. Above us floated the pale hull of our boat. I tried to remember Aiden's advice and swam as smoothly as I could. Out of the blueness appeared an immense dark gray shape, a right whale. Afraid to move, I stared as the more than 50-foot creature lazily swam past me. It wasn't alone. Another one, about equal in size, swam next to it. And slightly below was a calf about 15 feet long. Aiden clapped me on the back, shooting pictures of the pod. I dared to get a little closer, close enough to touch one. It felt smooth, rubbery, cool to the touch. One of the whales began singing, its song loud and haunting. The water carried the flute-like sound like a vibration. I felt it, like a shimmer running through my body. A sense of wonder teased me out of the depression I had been feeling. Time seemed to stand still, our world reduced to the magic of the encounter. Aiden trained his camera on the whales. He swam over to me, his eyes seeming to smile. The whales were slow enough that we could keep pace with them. And we did. Smaller fish I didn't recognize hovered near the whales. If I could, I would have laughed, the happiness flooding every nerve, every cell. Aiden gestured, pointing to the surface. It was time. We swam up, slowly rising as Aiden took pictures of the whales from above. We paused, halfway, allowing the nitrogen bubbles to leave our system. I seized his hand, a sensation awakening in me, long dormant. Carefully, I took a deep breath, removed my mouthpiece, then removed his. A dozen or so feet underwater, the joy of the moment engulfed me. I kissed him. It was that kind of meaningful kiss Mara and I had once shared, before love faded. Aiden's eyes widened. He hesitated, then his lips softened, kissing me back. The moment stretched into a lifetime. His lips reflected the coolness of the ocean, but his heart radiated warmth as the fire we had shared. My soul wanted to shout for joy. Time to surface. We adjusted our masks and swam towards the light. Later, alone at the lighthouse, Aiden and I sat close to each other on the makeshift bed. "Do you mind explaining?" he asked, his voice warm and kind. I fought the longing in my soul, searching for the words to express what I couldn't comprehend. "I know it's only been a couple of days since we met, but you've made me see that life is worth living. I'd given up, but now I see a future," I said, my breath catching in a surge of emotions. Would Aiden understand? A future? With me? Aiden's mouth curled into a sarcastic smile. I grimaced, feeling embarrassed. Stupid, right? I can't explain it. For a long time, I felt empty. I used to try and make Mara happy, but we fell out of love a long time ago. I don't know why we stayed together as long as we did. Aiden avoided my gaze. I haven't done long-term for years, short-term commitments only. I love my job and all the places I get to go. My ex-boyfriend wanted something more stable. That's why we broke up. There's another issue. "What's that?" I asked. He paused. This time he looked at me. His eyes held an unreadable expression. "Are you comfortable," Aiden said, his voice softening, "with falling in love with a man?" I leaned in, our lips meeting, the heat growing between us. I had never been with a man before. Never even dreamed of it. Aiden excited me in ways I've never been excited before. "Being with you," I began. "Maybe it won't last. It's hard to explain, but I feel comfortable with you." "This won't last," Aiden said, "but we can be friends. Really good friends." We continued our kiss well into the night. It had been a long time since I had been intimate with anyone. Aiden's closeness began the long, slow healing process. A month later, we were still together. The old lighthouse had changed. The roof no longer leaked. We had restored and repainted the walls, and best of all, we had a bed big enough for both of us, some second-hand furniture, and we had made a home for Barnacle. Unfortunately, the new front door was still on back order. The second bedroom had become our office. To make a living, I designed houses for the rich and famous who called Randall Creek home. Aiden and I scuba dove a dozen times, and tonight we lounged on the couch, watching our latest adventure while sipping Victory Golden Monkey Ale. On the big screen, we swam around the giant blue-gray whales, this time with a couple of Aiden's friends from the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute. The last month had been heaven. It might sound cliché, but I had never been happier. I kissed Aiden, giggling. He kissed back, pressing me into the sofa. I couldn't have enough of him. "Dad?" a voice yelled from the doorway. A car pulled away, its tires crunching the ground. I was too distracted to have heard it arrive. I looked over. My mind couldn't comprehend what I was seeing. My daughter stood just inside the door, suitcase in hand, jaw dropping nearly to the floor. Aiden and I untangled ourselves and stood up. Relief and anxiety warred inside my stomach. I had never expected to see Sophie again. The last thing she had said to me was that she hated me. "Sophie," I said, rooted to the spot, "I can explain." But could I? She had just seen her father kissing another man. A numb dread filled my heart. She wouldn't understand how much peace and happiness Aiden had brought me. Aiden had been my anchor for the last month, had been there when I needed someone to love me, to hold me, to believe in me when I couldn't believe in myself. So what if it had been a man? He provided the love and companionship I needed when my own family had forsaken me. I loved him. I glanced at him hoping he realized how I felt. I'd show him later tonight, in private. My daughter would not understand. I had no idea how to explain this. One crisis at a time. How did a 12-year-old girl get all the way from Vegas to Maine? Why hadn't Mara called? Aiden furrowed his brow, opened his mouth slightly, then closed it again. I didn't know what to do, Sophie stammered, dropping the suitcase and, hesitantly, stepping towards me. So I came here. In as gentle a tone as I could, I asked, "Where's your mother? Is she outside?" "I don't know where she is," she murmured, tears flowing down her cheeks. "I'm scared." "What do you mean?" Aiden said. Sophie gulped in some air. "She went on a business trip for 3 weeks, but nobody can find her." "Didn't she have someone stay with you?" I asked. "I lived with Grandma, but then she broke her hip and is in the hospital. They want to send her to a nursing home until she can walk again," Sophie said, regaining a little composure. "Grandma found your address somehow, got me a flight, and I came here. I took an Uber the rest of the way." What she had said to me before didn't matter. This was my baby girl. I opened my arms and she ran to me, blurting out a story I could barely follow. "Mom took her phone with her," Sophie inhaled. "She left me with Grandma, but Grandma fell in the kitchen and broke her hip and she's in the hospital. She wants you to call her." "Calm down," I said. "Don't forget to breathe," Aiden said. "How did you get here?" I asked, holding her tight. She let me go long enough to pull my letter from her pocket. "I found it with Mom's things. I think she's turned her phone off because I tried to call her. Grandma tried to call her, but it went to voicemail. That's why I went through her things. I found this. I think Mom lied." She creased her lips together, trying to keep from crying. "Grandma arranged a flight, had the airline take care of me, and then Ubered here." "First things first, Sophie. You're safe now," Aiden said. "I'll go make us some hot chocolate while you talk to your dad." "I better call your grandma," I said, dreading the call. Her grandma was Mara's mother, my ex-mother-in-law. When Aiden went to the kitchen to make us all hot chocolate, I stepped outside and called the hospital in Las Vegas. Grandma confirmed all Sophie had said. She didn't know where Mara was, and she had already informed Child Services and the courts about where Sophie was going. "No one else can care for my granddaughter," Grandma said. "Watch over her, at least until I get back on my feet." "Why didn't you call me?" "My daughter took away my granddaughter's phone so she couldn't contact you, and I never had your number," Grandma said, sounding a little sheepish. After I spoke with my ex-mother-in-law, I found Aiden and Sophie sitting on the couch, watching the latest video of Aiden and I swimming with the right whales. Aiden had also made popcorn. I sat down next to my daughter, my heart beating like an earthquake. I took a deep breath and turned to my daughter. "I'm sure you have some questions about Aiden and me." "No," she said. This was worse than I thought. Aiden took a deliberate bite of popcorn, as if this were an ordinary moment, and handed the bucket to Sophie. He shrugged, the gesture so casual it nearly shattered me. "I told her we met on our first night in Maine, that we're boyfriends, and we swim with whales." The words hung in the air like a sharp intake of breath before a storm. My chest tightened, my pulse hammering so loudly, I wondered if Sophie could hear it. The confusion, the disbelief. Her dad had kissed a man. Her dad lived with a man, romantically. Had her dad ever loved her mother? The questions I imagined in her head felt like daggers in mine. She would feel betrayed, like I'd hidden my life behind a mask that she'd never seen. Like I was someone else entirely. Like maybe I didn't love her. a stranger she couldn't trust. God, did she think I didn't love her? Her gaze lifted to mine, steady and unyielding. There was something about her expression, an almost unbearable weight, that cut through every barrier I'd built, that demanded truth, demanded answers I wasn't sure I could give. My heart clenched as I stood there, waiting, praying for the words I couldn't predict. You weren't happy with Mom. Not for a long time, I could tell, Sophie said, her voice steady but carrying the weight of years she didn't understand. You two fought all the time. Her eyes locked on mine, pleading, not with anger, but for understanding, maybe even forgiveness. I hated you for leaving us. I hated that you gave up on her. Then I found your letter. Her voice cracked and she bit her lip. Mom hid it from me. I realized I never listened to your side. Then Mom disappeared. She faltered, blinking rapidly, and I remembered you always came to my dance recitals. It hit me in waves. Her pain, her question, the fragile way she was piecing things together. And she softly said, "Does Aiden make you happy?" Her forehead creased, her lip trembling as asking were its own act of courage. I glanced at Aiden, my heart so full it felt impossible to contain. Giving myself permission, I let the smile break through. He makes me the happiest man on the planet. Her lips quirked up for a brief moment, but her voice fell back into cautious hope. "And you really dive with whales?" she asked. There was a vulnerability in her words, as if she needed to believe us, needed something steady to hold on to. Like me, she needed someone to love her. Did she feel abandoned by her mother, as I once did? I remembered the wonder of swimming with Aiden and the whales, the endless blue, the hush of the underwater world, the way the sunlight danced through the waves. It was the same awe I felt when my baby girl was born. The moment I realized I could love so fiercely that it ached. She needed to know that, needed to feel it in her bones. "It's magic down there," I said, my voice catching. "It's what we do," Aiden added, his voice warm and steady, as he reached across the couch and took my hand. The simple gesture carried so much comfort, love, certainty. "Do you want to come with us?" he asked. "Our next dive is day after tomorrow, and we will show you how it's done." Sophie leaned closer to me, a conspiratorial spark lighting her eyes. "I like him. Can I stay?" she whispered, like it was a secret only we shared. I pulled her into my arms, holding her as if the universe had finally righted itself. "You can stay with us," I said, my voice thick with emotion, my heart brimming with unshed tears. "I love you, baby doll." Epilogue. They assigned us a Las Vegas social worker to spare us the 2,500-mile trip. She worked with child welfare, helping us navigate the storm we'd been thrown into. The judge granted me provisionary primary custody of my daughter, and I made it a point to check in with both the social worker and Grandma every day. Grandma, resilient as ever, was transferred to a long-term care facility, and the doctors expected her to make a full recovery in 2 months. She hadn't heard from Mara. Finally, she filed a missing persons report. The call came from the Vegas police. They asked their questions, thorough but detached, before launching an official investigation. They didn't suspect foul play. On our video chats, I could see the frustration in our social worker's eyes, feel it in her clipped tone. When I spoke to the judge, his voice carried the weight of disapproval. A 12-year-old girl traveling alone across country to her father. It wasn't just irresponsible. It was abandonment. The police found her, in Greece, with Abdul, her longtime boyfriend. Sophie and I learned later that Mara had met Abdul while I was trying to start my firm, the same time she accused me of having an affair. The irony was bitter, but the truth, that was even harder to swallow. The judge reviewed the case again, and this time he gave me and Aiden full custody of Sophie. One night we packed dinner and climbed to the top of the lighthouse. The sunset painted the eastern sky in the soft hues of gold and lavender, a quiet backdrop to the new rhythm of our lives. We often came here now, Aiden, Sophie, and me. My family, unexpected, imperfect, and beautifully whole. It was enough. For the first time in a decade, it was more than enough. I was at peace. The end. Thank you everybody for joining me. I appreciate it. I'm Gio, author and reader of this piece. No, I do not use a computer to read this. I do it myself, for those of you who are interested. That's why there's a few little mistakes here and there. I appreciate all your prayers and well wishes for my recovery. It's made a huge difference, and thank you. I love all of you. Peace and love, everybody. See you next time.